And we are recording. I am excited to have Anthony with us again today. We've had him on before, and if you didn't see that one, Catherine was on with us, and we had a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it. But he's got a Kickstarter ready, so you can actually get the game now.
Not the game.
Not the game.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well,
We'll get, yeah. But
I'm gonna
fiction based on the game.
oh, this is
Yes.
going to be so much fun. But
Yes.
you could use this in playing the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It'll definitely stimulate, stories. And that's actually, yeah, part of the intention is that one of the things, and you've witnessed this in one of our little group discussions that we have, where people have a harder time getting their mind around, well, what would you do? Because the setting is a little bit different than most, fantasy RPGs, or even like a Call of Cthulhu or things like that. When you have human instead of human characters, it's different when you're dealing with, immortal spirits. That it's like, okay, well, one of the questions, how do you challenge the players? If and stuff like that, like what happens, how do these things play out, how is it if they get beat up, how does that work? Do they just poof and then respawn in heaven, or do they hang around, or is there, all that kind of stuff. There's just so many questions that people come up with. And what it does is it takes, for some people love that, and then other people kind of makes an arm's reach kind of a feel like, okay, I'm getting my mind around that. But what a good story does, or a bunch of good stories in this case, is it paints a picture, gives you a framework for how it works, and paints a picture for what it might feel like to engage in stories in that world. And it turns that arm's reach kind of a thing to, oh, bring it here, and I want more of that, or I want to be a character like that, or I would love to, oh, that gives me an idea for a bigger story, that could branch off of that, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some people have a harder time wrapping their heads around some of these concepts.
Oh yeah.
And especially if you're not familiar with this type of thing.
Yes.
Um, Yeah, so that is excellent. So what we are talking about is Allies of Majesty.
Yes.
And this is a really, I'm going to see if I can do a screen share here and just show. You do not want to work with me today, do you? Frustrating. I'll have to piddle for a little bit.
That's fine.
But I will see if he's got some posters in the background. There's beautiful art that goes with this. And okay, so what is I checked out the Kickstarter just briefly, and I was having a hard time trying to decide which thing I wanted to get. Can you explain what you have available?
Okay. Yeah. So for those that didn't see the first podcast, we kind of just told you a thing. Like, if you don't know what this is, then it might be confusing. So to back up a little bit, Allies of Majesty, the core product that isn't available yet, but we're building toward that, is a tabletop role playing game where you participate in cooperative storytelling, and one person will tell the main story, and is in basically control of the environment and how all the other non-player characters work. And then all the other players have one character that is their character that they're acting out, so to speak, or they control that character's role in the story. So there are that character's impact on the story, how that character behaves. And so that kind of thing. So that's the game. But in this case, instead of being in some distant world that's unrelatable, it is our own world. And instead of being instead of being like human characters that are encountering these crazy monstrous things or other things, you actually are in the role of the spiritual beings, the holy spiritual beings, and you are generally behind the scenes, and most often the humans don't even know you're involved in the situation, but you're trying to influence humans toward the good, toward the right, or help them when they're in hard times, and you're trying to defend them or stem off the influence of evil spiritual forces that are seeking their rebellion, destruction, all of those kinds of things of the humans, giving them a hard time in general. And so that's how the stories go. In the role playing game, you're playing this stuff out, but in the fiction, in this case, and that's what the Kickstarter is for a collection, an anthology of a bunch of different stories that take place in the world, and we're going to tie it all together with one common thread of a story. That character right in front there is named Hirael, and he is going to be guiding a human named Thomas through a bunch of stories. Thomas is going to, if it works out the way we're planning, is going to get basically to sit in on tales in the heavens, whether in like Paul, like whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. He's going to get to go to the heavens and sit in on minstrels, which are these the ones with the human face, that they are ones that sing and all that, but they also kind of double as the record keepers, if you will. And so they will sing and perform tales, because angels, Elohim, are not omniscient. They don't know everything. So instead of reading it in a scroll or something, I don't know, they actually almost like a movie theater, if you think of it like this. Like, here's an arena there and an arena here and an arena there. This story's playing over here and this story's over here. Which one do I want to sit in on and learn about other Elohim's adventures, other of the angels' adventures, and then also learn about just happenings on the earth and important things in history and happenings. And that's kind of how they stay informed, and maybe a little bit of a downtime activity. So that's kind of the premise. That's not, I don't think that's real, but that's the fantasy
It kind
premise.
of reminds me of the old Clash of the Titans, how it showed them the Greek deities
Yeah,
looking down on the world. It was kind of a
yeah,
big table type thing that they were looking down on what was happening. And
yeah,
I mean, he says that the earth is his footstool, and the way we kind of think about the earth, it and what he's doing, they are probably looking down on us somehow or another. uh,
yeah, yeah,
you know I keep trying to remind people that God and his word are multidimensional, so it's hard for us to have a concept of how that works. And one of the things that I like about the game is this gives you a safe place to kind of play with those ideas,
exactly.
and to start to realize, because like in the game that we played, there was a mother with some children, and there were demons that were tormenting them, and one of the demons was trying to coax one of the children to a dangerous situation, and another demon was just making everything go wrong with the mother so that she was frustrated and dropping everything. And I'm
Yeah,
like, is that not the way it is so often? And we can't
yeah.
always blame it on demons, I'm sure.
No, there's not. Yeah,
you,
not a
you
demon
know
under every. And I purposely go out of the way in the stories to make sure I don't present that there's a demon under every rock and behind every headache. You know,
right, right.
that instead sometimes they're aggravating and accentuating our reactions to messes that maybe we caused or that are
Yes.
just natural.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that though, the other thing that I like about it, or that I try to do with it, is those those unclean spirits and whatnot in the story that you're referencing, the game session that you're referencing, they weren't just there for no reason. willy-nilly, yeah, let's just give this person a hard time. They were there, and you may not remember this, or you may, but they were there because the lady's sister, um, that woman's sister, was very jealous of her, and really, she had healthy children, her, beautiful children, and she, couldn't conceive for the longest. And then when she did, her child, had some issues, and things like that. And so I don't think we described them in the show, or in the story. I think we might have said that it might have been physical deformities or something, like challenges. So whatever it is, she couldn't get pregnant. Then when she did, it wasn't a healthy child. And that the spirits, in that case, the unclean spirits, reacted to and seized off of that malice and hatred, and we're using that as excuse and right to go bother the sister, because God, the way we kind of play it out in the world, in the game world, is that God has given humans dominion over this earth. And just the same, when God, I forget whether it's, I think it was Ezekiel, where he says, I searched, or I looked for a man who would, basically stand in the gap and intercede. And if I would have found one, I would have, forgiven, or I would have relented. But instead, I'm going to punish. I'm going to act out on this. And so, just the same in this case, it's the reverse, and it kind of gets into how, beliefs in witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. But it
That is
is,
exactly where my brain was
yeah.
going.
And so she wasn't intentionally performing witchcraft, this sister, but she was, applying her earthly authority to unwittingly, or maybe, her malice, to actually cause these things.
We
And we were there because the woman was praying to God, like called out to God, in her frustration, and we were the response to that in this case. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we respond to the positive prayers as well.
Yes. And this is so par for what we're dealing with in the world today. I my All of our children are adults now. I've got grandchildren running around. You probably hear them in the background. But we had this discussion the other day that we've had some people move in to the prairie from the coasts to get away from things, and they've got a different belief system, and different lifestyles and stuff than what we have out here.
Sure.
But it is interesting when a witch comes to the area,
Okay.
because we have basically a community, and I'm trying to be careful here, but we basically have a community of witches who don't know that they're witches.
Oh, okay.
And which is even more dangerous than a witch who
Okay.
knows what they are doing, or has an idea of what they are doing. So it and I explain witchcraft, and I talked to her about this. She's become a friend. Okay, so I've got this one particular witchy friend, and I told her, I said, witchcraft is manipulation. It is trying to, like, white witchcraft, they see that as trying to manipulate things for the good of people,
Yeah.
and black witchcraft would be trying to manipulate things for the bad of people. The thing that makes all of that bad, as far as biblically speaking, is that we're trying to manipulate things for our will, or the perceived will of someone else, compared to God's will,
Yes. You
right?
nailed it right on the head. That is
Yeah,
the
and she
biblical
said that
narrative.
too. She said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
you've nailed it."
Yeah.
And we have people in the churches today, and I don't believe our area is alone in this, but we have people in the churches today that are trying to manipulate things
Yeah.
according to their own will. And it is hard, and just in their defense, it is hard to say, "Thy will be done, Lord." you know, and you want to be able to pray for people whenever they
Yeah.
ask for prayer, and, but we need to be careful with that too. So, this is another instance where this concept that you've got here with the Allies of Majesty is just so right on par with
Mhm.
what people need to learn, and you can do this as a family
Yeah.
with this.
So you were speaking, and actually, let me break down the picture you have there, the cover art that we're working on. Now, this is not the final version of it. This is a draft of it, but we're pretty, we're moving along. This is, I think, pretty solidly where we're going with it. And if you look behind the front character in the foreground, you'll see this, and you can't see it as well yet. We're working on it. To finalize it more, but it's going to be an impossible collection of people. They're not literally in this space, praying together at the moment, but what it's imagery, and it's supposed to be showing anything from modern to ancient to all different cultures, and these are all people praying to God. These are all people praying to the Most High in the game, Yahweh, our God. And the idea is you've got the two in the background, and the idea is supposed to be that one, the taller one, the one standing upright, is there to defend them, and the other one is charging out. He's responding to their prayers, and they're not obeying the people. That's something we want to be careful about. The prayers are not to command. It's not, sorcery. You're not manipulating, demons, where it's like the idea in these things where you have a demon that you bind it to your will and all these things. It's none of that. They're praying to God, and God in response, when it's prayers of his will, he sends out his agents to do things.
And we have a good precedent for this in Daniel.
Yeah. Yes,
When
absolutely.
Daniel prayed to God, and then the angel came later and
Yes.
said, I was busy with this area over in this Prince of
Yeah,
Persia,
I was
wasn't it?
tied. I got tied up
Yeah,
in my way. Yeah.
but I was on my way, and so we do have precedents for this
Yeah.
within scripture. I
Yeah.
I love the way that you have kept this all like completely scriptural. There's some
Thank you.
context that comes out of the book of Enoch, which
Yeah.
the people who follow me know
Yeah.
where the book of Enoch.
Yeah, it gives us a window. What I'm trying to do is not promote my theology on anything. I'm really, really, really trying to keep everything Christian ecumenical, not just worldwide ecumenical, but within the Christian, Christian, but ecumenically Christian, in the sense of I want everybody of Christian traditions to be able to come in and enjoy and explore, get in. You're all welcome in the sandbox that we've created, like you
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
But yeah, but what I'm trying to do is make it reflect legitimate things we can find in the ancient biblical times. I'm pretty much cutting it off. I'm not getting into the medieval things and all the stuff like that, and the choirs of angels and all that are all come later. I'm cutting it off pretty much at during the time the Bible was written, from there all the way back. From the time it was pretty well finished, the New Testament all the way back. And so Enoch gives a certifiable, but it's also echoed in Jubilees and the Book of Giants and a bunch of others,
Yes, yes.
that it's, and of course in the Bible itself, but it gives us a window into ways that these things were looked at and processed. And that's what I really want to do, is not in the discussion guide. So I'll get to that in a second. What I really want people to be able to do in the game and then with the book is just mentally play around in this space, because the Bible is supposed to be a Jewish meditation literature, and that's what you're supposed to read it over and over again, think about it, stew on it, and and when you do that, you pick up new things all the time, and new things you didn't get, or connections between books that you
That's
didn't
why
see
I
before.
say it's
Yeah.
multidimensional, because it meant something to the people in that day. It
Yes.
meant something to the people immediately
Yeah.
afterwards, and it
Yeah.
means something to us today.
Yeah.
And in the different seasons of our life, we can apply it in so many different ways.
Yeah.
It's just The most amazing book, as far as I'm
It
concerned.
really is. And the more I've gotten into it, I said this, this is something I say that it's like, I hated English class and literature class in school, in middle school. I was sitting in sixth grade and I'm like, oh my God. And then she'd say stuff like, the teacher, she'd say, well, what do you think the author meant here? And I'm like, how do you know they meant that? And oh my goodness, and I just really couldn't stand it. And then now as an adult, I'm seeing this in the Bible, and I'm like, really? I'm like, this is so much better than anything we read in literature class. And and they're all the techniques she tried to point out and everything. I'm like, it's so much better and awesome the way it's done in
I
the
mean,
Bible.
you compare the Bible to Nathaniel Hawthorne,
Yeah,
okay? And honors English, we started with the Scarlet Letter, and I'm not knocking
sure.
the book, but here in Oklahoma, they recently passed legislation that this school year they would start using the Bible in curriculum, from a
Awesome.
historic
Yeah.
context. And in literature, I mean,
Wording.
the
Yeah.
teachers, especially the Christian teachers, blew a cork at this legislation.
Huh.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys do not understand
Were
what
they
an opportunity.
were they upset, if I'm understanding right? Were they upset saying that it tried to treat it like fiction instead of as that?
No, no.
No? Why were they upset
Mm-mm.
then?
It gave them something else that they had to think about to do. They didn't feel qualified to teach the Bible. I mean, they had a whole list, so you've got,
Hmm.
I did some videos on this. I'm like, this is an opportunity for the pagans to pick apart, have at it.
Yeah.
Pick apart my Bible if you want to.
Let's have these
Go for it.
discussions. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's an opportunity for the Christians to show where the Bible fits into science, math,
Yeah.
history, literature. Um,
Yeah.
but none of them saw it that way. They are still fighting it. They are
Wow.
absolutely still fighting it. And of course, it's easier for me to see as a homeschool mom because I use the Bible as the basis for every subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like a no-brainer for me. And you're talking about teachers that are trying to teach for tests
Yeah.
specifically,
Yeah. Yeah.
not for
Yeah.
the
There is the
education of the children,
educational
and
system that
even the
teaches
good
the test. Yeah.
teachers, they're tied to that. So
Yeah.
it's sad, but here again is an opportunity that this shows this, because yeah, through I mean, the scriptures cover a wide range of history, whatever you feel about history.
Yeah.
For me, history starts with the Bible
Yeah.
and will end with the Bible. Other people don't see, the world in that way, and I get that. But one way or another, it covers such a large perspective on history
Yeah.
and the world. And yeah,
Well, if you look, I mean, most of our modern civilization is heavily influenced by our modern Western civilization is heavily influenced by Rome, and then beyond before that the Greeks, which were heavily influenced Rome, and then the Greeks are an ancient Near Eastern culture, and they're kind of a transitionary culture depending on what scholar you're talking to. Some will say that they are kind of a transitionary culture between ancient and more what we have as modern Western thought. And of course, that doesn't count in Eastern thought and all the other things. But I'm just saying it's definitely had a large impact on where the Bible started. Like that whole area and where it leads up into, because where does it end? It ends with Rome. It really does. Well, it ends with Revelation. Some people say that's a commentary on Rome, but regardless, it could be typology and all that kind of stuff. It could be all those things, but
yeah,
it at least when we're getting into Acts, we're dealing with Rome, and Paul's letters and all those things. So
yeah,
it it really does tie to a heavily influential portion of the world's history, you know. Yeah,
Big,
at the
big
very least,
time.
no matter who you are. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can admit
big,
that. Yeah.
big time. Yeah, because Persia, and that, of course, I believe that the empires were worldwide, and I think that we've got evidence of
Okay.
that over here in America. We've found, here in Oklahoma, we found Viking things, and
Yeah.
in America, we found, like Egyptian things and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, along those lines, it's always very interesting to me how whatever caused these things, whether it's similar spiritual influences or whatever, that like you look at like Aztec structures, religious structures, and it's like these are pretty much ziggurats. Like these are, they're the same.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There's just so many things, and you've got the same thing in Japan,
yeah,
China, all over the world. We've got so many things that, and I don't think all of that is just Tower of Babel. I think a lot of that happened afterwards too.
yeah.
And you
Okay,
can see so many of the same influences
yeah,
and so many of the same creatures.
yeah.
So you've got this
There are,
iconography
yeah,
here, and you can see that in South America and in, different places, India and Egypt. You know,
yeah,
everybody's got creatures like this. So where did they
yeah.
get that?
There are
Because,
so many similarities and all that, yeah, and a lot of the
yeah.
legends, and recently I've been seeing more, people exploring connections with, legends of giants in the different areas, and
Hmm.
what's interesting about it is the connections, like, the similarities of multiple different places around the world talk about them having 2 rows of teeth
Hmm.
or talk about them having the 6 fingers
And
and
the
stuff like that.
only way that all of that makes sense is in the Bible.
Yeah, they're either seeing the same thing
Hmm.
and reporting the same things, or but that doesn't account for the architecture or anything, but I'm saying that's like,
Yeah, yeah,
or
the
they're
Bible is the only thing that
they have
kinda
the same
makes
source, yeah,
pulls
one
it
or the
all
other, yeah,
together. Yeah.
right,
I
right.
mean, the how with the Native Americans out here, that wasn't saying howdy. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
saying, "I only have 5 fingers."
Oh, interesting,
That's what that was, is,
interesting,
"I only have 5 fingers, see?" Um, because
interesting.
they have cave paintings throughout the US with, larger creatures, humanoid creatures
Yeah,
with 6 fingers
yeah,
and 6 toes.
yeah,
So and there are legends, all of the tribes have legends of
yeah, and that's some of the videos I was watching. I'm just on the edge of that. I haven't, because 'cause I've been spending the last years just digging directly into ancient, Jewish writings and then biblical stuff, and I haven't had time to dig to explore the
so
side things as
you're
much.
just setting it and getting into some of this.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, this is one of those, because I have people come to me and say, "How do I talk to my children about this?
yeah,
How do I teach my children about this?" Because you don't want to be, promoting the boogeyman with
yeah,
the children. You want them to be aware. It's kind of like being weather aware.
yeah,
You don't want them to be afraid of tornadoes, but you want them to have a healthy respect
exactly.
of the weather. And it is the same thing with these things, is we want them to be aware of what, forces are. The Bible says
Yeah,
principalities and powers. We're not fighting each other. You
right.
know, we're fighting principalities and powers.
Yeah,
And it's easier to love your neighbor if you can understand that.
yeah. And understand too that I really love this, and it's been woven into some of our stories a little bit. But I love in Judges where Joshua approaches the military looking figure, and he says, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" And he says, "Neither." Like, I serve God's agenda. I'm the
Yeah.
commander of the Lord, of the armies of heaven. And so it's like, I'm not for either of you. There is no
Right.
one earthly, you know, there is no one earthly empire that is mine. And even with the Jewish people, how often was he disciplining them and not he was fighting for them when they were lined up with him, but it's when they were lined up with him, not,
Right.
and whenever they tried to manipulate witchcraft by taking the ark out to battle without without God's leading and trying to
Right.
manipulate God, he wasn't having it. He did not reward it.
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
yeah,
and we have to remember there was a promise with Abraham that his seed would cover like the sand,
yeah,
you
yes,
know. And so at this point, with all of us mixed as much as we are,
yeah,
it is very likely that all of us could have some Abraham and some Raphaim. It's likely.
who knows
Okay.
what? Yeah,
Yeah. And so it's the heart that matters,
yes,
and
yeah,
that relationship.
yeah,
So there, at this point, there's not one particular people that's any better, any worse than anybody
right,
else.
right,
You
right,
know,
yeah,
um, we are all sinners
yeah,
needing that grace and
we
mercy,
absolutely are.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I hope, right, in future volumes, once this is out, because you have to build, so I'm really hoping that, um, because I like whenever possible to have people writing out of their own experience. Even if they're writing fiction, the fiction is born out of personal, because it's always just and I have an editor, team member that's really helping me with that as well. But I do like that because we can only imagine somebody else's experience so well, but we need to at times, and we stretch ourselves. But I hope to, in volumes 2 and beyond, be able to draw in a lot more wider culturally, diverse group of authors, so that we can just really, but Christian still, so that we can tell stories from more around the world, more representative of what you see there. With the gathering of people. That's what I hope. Maybe people just, yeah. I don't even want to qualify. Just so many different things that we could do. So that's what I hope. But that's what we're doing, is just making a playground for these ideas and just giving people. So let me. Yeah, I mentioned the study guide, or the not study, discussion guide. So what we start off with a digital. You can buy a digital ebook copy. You can buy a paperback. You could buy a hardcover. I really like, if you do the one pledge that's $39, which is I think it's collect share care, or something like that. And the idea is, hey, if you could collect the hardback, and you could collect the hardback, share the paperback with somebody, or that's your loaner copy, or the one for you to read, and it gets crinkled and it's okay. And then, you have also an ebook for convenience if you like them, or share that with somebody. And the idea is, though, if you do that one, you get your name in the book also as a supporter, because you're helping us out a little more in both ways. You're helping us a little more financially, by buying a few extra copies, but you're also, sharing those copies, which gets the word out more, because that's part of the idea too, is to really get the word out and grow an audience. But this collection is the top that you see right there, is the, like, book club, or group, small group pledge. And that one, you get 5 ebooks, and you get 4 paperbacks and a hardback, and then a discussion guide, a digital discussion guide. And the idea is, you could have, easily 5 to 10 people in a group. And what you could do is, and this would be great for youth groups and things like that, especially to capture, people that tend to slip through the cracks, that aren't necessarily into sports as much, or those kind of activities. And they, may or may not be introverted. Not all readers are introverted, but maybe a little more, like that, but would engage in more cerebral things and nerdy things. And, to give something for them, where basically, the group can read the prologue before the next time we meet, or read the next story before the next time we meet. And then the discussion guide just gives them a direction in their discussion. And I'm trying to avoid the the rote questions that we always see in religious, especially discussion guides, or just anything. It doesn't have to be religious. Schools, everything. It's like, what stood out to you the most about those things are just getting you to regurgitate the same information that you just read.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
so much better to
yeah.
do actual discussion. I
So
mean,
that's what I want to do is
any
tailor
two
the thing.
people that are reading a book series,
Yeah,
at the same time, and I've got my tin hat ladies. We do this. We get
yeah.
into books, and
That's the point. Yeah,
we'll start talking about, oh my goodness, did you catch this part in this book, and did you
right.
catch this part in here? And youngsters do that with movies a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they'll, oh, my
Yep.
favorite part of the movie was this, and my favorite, and they should be able to do that with
That's
something
the
like
whole
this.
point, and they're
Yeah.
bite-sized stories. They're I think the longest ones we have currently in a single story are close to 7,000 words, and some of them are like 1,600 to, 3,000 in that range. It's, so they're not giant stories. They're definitely manageable to read in between if you meet once a week or even or whatever. They're definitely manageable to easily get done. But the idea is that I want, and I learned this from, another cousin. When we were talking about this, he does stuff with VR. That's his job, and he takes youth out. And he says it really helps. The more you can get, it helps their engagement. The participants, the more you can get them talking about themselves. And so that's the kind of questions we want to. There's two types of guides in the discussion we want to go, directions we want to go. And one is, really it's like, how did you feel, or could you relate to feelings? Like, what did, basically just share and give them somebody a prompt and an opportunity to share and to think about their own experiences, and maybe something in the story that is unrelatable to them or relatable to them. I've never experienced anything like that, and that got me thinking, or, oh man, I just felt exactly like this character, or whatever it is. And I wanted those things, and then also I want to touch on the historical stuff too. If there's anything in the book where it's like separating fact and fiction, hey, this thing here is just imagery. It's biblical imagery, but it's not in the Bible that way. Or this part here really is based off of this historical document, and not dive deep into it, but just give them trivia and tidbits enough that they can be stimulated and curious, and then go explore it more if they want.
Well, and young people really have a tendency that if you will spark their interest, they love a good deep dive.
Yes,
I,
yeah,
I, when Paul and I were, let's see, our oldest too, I was kind of in between the two oldest. I think I was pregnant with our second, and I ended up teaching Wednesday evening children's church, and I had no clue what I was doing, none at all, and did not get any curriculum or anything to do it. So went to like a bookstore and said, okay, I'm going to be doing this. I need something,
yeah,
and came up with this workbook thing. And it was perfect. I have used that with my children, this one.
yeah,
And it just kind of went through the Bible, and it just gave you ideas and stuff. And I put a big timeline up for the kids, and they filled it out, like drew pictures on it and stuff. And I had between the ages of 5 and 15 in there, and which is a pretty amazing group to work with. And they were doing homework for me for Wednesday evening children's church because they were enjoying it so much. Um, it was amazing. So stuff like this, if you can just ask the right questions and
yeah,
encourage the right things and listen to them,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because children will come up with the weirdest ideas sometimes, but they're amazing.
yeah, yeah,
The verse in the Bible that where Jesus says there are some of you today that will not die until you
yeah.
see me come back in the clouds. Um, my children came to me one day and they're like, we think we found the Highlander verse. And I'm like, what? There's got to be Highlanders because they still have to be alive, right?
There can be only one, right?
Exactly.
It's
So
John.
yeah, and I'm not going to poo-poo something like that. I'm just not, because they need to be able. God,
Yeah,
gave them an imagination.
right.
So it's like, well, I'm not going to say it's not possible.
That's great. I know somebody who did that I don't know him personally, but who did that in his comic book series. He made a Christian comic book thing, and in it, it's kind of like superheroes. It's Christian like superheroes, and one of the superheroes is this guy that it's John still alive, and they captured, or they set him free. He was captured, by some bad guys, and they set him free, and now he like runs around in this like knight armor, like basically the armor of God, with the sword. But he's one of the superheroes, one of the two. But he's John that never died. It's funny, the
Yeah,
apostle.
I mean, why not have fun with it
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that and say,
yeah,
okay, if God did work this way, how would
yeah,
he do it? And that's one of the nice things about how this works. It lets you use that imagination.
exactly.
But
And that's really it. It's really it. Is it's just here's the value in that regard. We tend to, as a culture, especially as Christians, we tend to compartmentalize our lives, and guys are especially bad about this. But this is what I watch. This is my entertainment. This is my family or relationships. This is my religion. This is my intellectual stuff. It's all in different walled gardens, if you will. It's all these different
women
areas.
do the same thing. They just happen to have a hand in each cookie jar.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
They are separate cookie jars, but
Yeah.
yeah, I get what you're.
And so this allows you to explore or incorporate your faith with your fun when you're doing your hobby stuff and you're engaging in, or at least the books is different. That's your entertainment in a different way. But the game itself too, when you're your game time and social, the game is very social, and that's what this book club idea pledge is making it social. Even though reading books is kind of a something you do by yourself, but we all know book clubs and stuff. Yeah. So but anyway, yeah, incorporating those things and mixing them together, because there's nothing, it's like depressing if I'm in a situation, especially in a role-playing game where you're trying to get in the mind of the character and act like them. And not everybody feels this way, I understand, but for me, it's like when because I like to relate to the character I'm taking on, and so it's just hard for me because my faith is such an integral part of my life. It's hard for me to then be without that hope in a world that doesn't have that hope.
Yeah. And that is one of the struggles that I have with D&D whenever we
Yeah,
play, because the way you build your characters and stuff, and we've had lots of those discussions in the group, but it is, you know, a world without the almighty creator,
right.
and trying to navigate that
Yeah,
without the foundations of how I live my life. And
yeah,
it is difficult.
yeah, yeah, because it's so integral, and it's not a thought experiment I really want to engage in. I don't.
No, yeah, me either.
Yeah,
Me either.
yeah,
I understand where, because Catherine and I have had, these discussions, debates before,
sure.
and I would never play a tiefling.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
couldn't do it,
yeah,
and she countered with, it gives some people a safe place to experiment with, that kind of a character. And in a way, because she's a life coach now, in a way it gives you that ability to deal with maybe the the traumatic, hard, bad feelings that maybe you've stuffed down,
Yeah.
especially as Christians, because a
Uh-huh.
lot of children are taught, well, you're not, you have to be good all the time, right?
Right.
And we're
Right.
not. And
Yeah.
so it gives them that outlet
I
to
get it.
let that out, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
If you're in a healthy group where that's the but if when you're adults and you're in a group of where now you're when you are now processing those things, you're encouraged to you're not, it's rewarded and you're encouraged to go deeper in that, but you're not suffering the real consequences of this behavior. You're not really suffering, and an example I've used is just simply, okay, because while role playing is used, let me take a step back. Role playing is used like, okay, let's say you're a salesperson. We're going to use role play in the trainings because we want you to walk through scenarios where you're
right.
getting objections or you're making a call
Hmm.
and having to make a cold connection warm, or all these things. And why do you do that? And same thing with military and other things.
Hmm.
Why do you do that? It's because it helps you become more comfortable with the situation and be able to
It's
handle
muscle memory for
it.
the brain,
Yeah,
is
and
what it is.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that's my
And
caution.
her as a
Yeah,
DM, she makes sure that there's consequences
sure.
for those things that, well,
Right,
if
right.
you
And if
do
you're
this
in the
wrong
safe
thing,
environment
then
like
what
that,
is
yeah.
going to happen? What I'm,
Yeah, yeah.
so that makes sense. But yeah,
Allies, since we're talking about Allies of Majesty, it's more of a different thing because that's one of the questions that's ever come up is, well, you're pretty much, and not every audience will understand if I say this, so I don't say it often. Like, well, it'd be boring. You're all paladins, is what they say eventually.
yeah,
Because, but it's like, it's not, because it's like one of the things you'll see in the stories is they can have personality quirks. They're not all perfect because if they were, none would have rebelled, and they can be, and it's not a sin against God to be unlikable or grumpy or anything,
right, right.
or
I mean,
doubtful or
we
any of the, yeah.
the
But
kingdom of God is very diverse.
yes,
Just
yeah,
in the way that it's explained to us,
yes.
and just the idea that a third of the angels fell, there's got to be diversity there for that to
There's
happen.
definitely diversity. Yes,
Yes.
because otherwise, and I mean, God just isn't that boring, either. But
Brian
yeah.
Godawa did an excellent job in his books, and he's making a children's set, which I'm excited
Oh, is
about
he?
because
Okay, I
his
didn't know that.
adult set is way adult.
Okay, so I know his other stuff's very adult.
Yeah,
I've only
his
encountered the one book. I know of the other books, but I've only in his
I
one series.
they're good, but they
Yeah.
are very adult
Yeah.
books.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was you need to be very
Yeah. That my
mature kids.
audience is here's my goal with that. Just since you brought it up, and then I don't want to steal the topic, but it's I want it. I'm gearing it toward, and I don't. It's if I say teens and young adults like a buzzword right now, and I'm not knocking. I'm saying
Right.
it isn't young adult the way you would classify that as a genre. But what I
Right.
mean is people of those ages should feel comfortable. Teenagers also should feel comfortable reading it.
Right.
But on the extremes, I definitely want it to be. I want it to be safe for those. I want a mom of a reader that's a 12-year-old that's reading to not be upset when she finds out and reads it
Or
for
to
herself.
do as a read aloud.
But
I
yes. But
I
I
do a lot of
also
read
want it
aloud.
mature
Yeah.
enough that adults can read it and be entertained and not feel like it's beneath them.
Exactly. And
Yeah. So we
Brian
push the
Godawa,
borders a little bit,
yeah,
but
he
not to the
gave
point of pushing the borders, just like the
yeah.
Bible pushes the borders.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's all in the Bible. If you're reading King
yeah,
James only, guys, you've got it
yeah,
all in there.
yeah.
So I'm not putting that against him, but
No, no,
he
no. Yeah, I knew you
gave
weren't. I
the
just figured since you brought it
Watchers,
up, I could.
yeah,
Yeah,
he gave the Watchers such character. I
yeah,
mean, huge character, and even had banter between them and stuff.
yes, yeah,
And
yep,
so, like I said, I'm looking forward to his children's set because
yeah,
the way he gives that is very much how you've got this game set
yeah.
up, and so yeah, it's not. I mean, honestly, the Crusades were a bunch of paladins, right? I mean, why can't she just go a bunch of paladins and
Yeah,
do your
yeah,
thing?
it's just I guess it's because what they're trying to do is go with the alignment thing of you're all lawful good, and it's like, well, yeah, okay, kind of. I mean, yes, but if you're going there, but there's such a
Let's
breadth
get deeper
in
than
not
that.
one
Yeah,
yeah.
let's get deeper than that.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly, and that's all playing out in the different orders in the imagery I use in that. With you've got your warriors and your messengers, ministering spirits, and minstrels, and the character on the front there is a tri-order, so he's got like three purposes involved. You don't see it here on the front, but there's not the man face that would be in the back. But yeah, it's basically. It is, and those, yeah, some of my big things, the Leviathan and Behemoth and Ziz and all that. Ziz is a lesser known thing, but I pulled it because it fits well. What I did with, side note, just because I know you like these kind of tangents for your podcast, but what I did was I took if you look, you can find that it is, and I don't know exactly, Ziz is kind of a latecomer, but they have those three. And so you've got Leviathan is in the waters, you've got the beast of the water, you've got Behemoth, the beast on the land,
Of
and
the land.
Ziz is the one in the sky,
Okay.
and so I made my dragon images. If you go back, that see you've got it looking kind of mixed like a sea creature, and what I have just as a little trivia, if you go to the fire, I'm trying to mix the imagery so it starts off with these more fire abilities like the red dragon, and and then when you beat it up enough, then it shifts more toward water type things.
Interesting.
And so
Okay.
it's not literal elemental mastery, it's all imagery, it's all what fire represents in the Bible. And so I mean, but look in the Bible, you've got the red dragon, and what does it do? It pours water forth out of its mouth in Revelation. But then you've got in Job, it talks about Leviathan breathing fire. So
Right.
yeah, yeah. So I kind of, I'm trying to mix these things together. With that, and of course, you've got your 7 heads and 10 horns, going on. Now, not all of them have the whole 7, but if you keep going, there's Ziz, and it would be alphabetically toward the end. So you ought to get to
Uh,
Z, I guess, if it's sorting them alphabetically.
I don't know
Um,
if it is or not.
so there you go.
That one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that one isn't directly stated in the Bible, although the word Ziz in Hebrew is in the Bible a couple places, I think. But I know at least one, I think two. But it's always translated like creatures, like locusts or creatures or something else. And I don't think it really means this either. But this is supposed to be the sky one. But if you look at it, Genesis, so you've got in the beginning when God was creating the earth was formless, so it was chaotic, it was void, it was devoid, empty, it's formless and void, and darkness hovered over the face of the deep. And then God creates light, and God separates the waters and does all these things to order everything. He gets rid of the darkness, he gets rid of chaos, he deals with it, and then he creates life and fills it with life. So he does all these things, he deals with those things. So what I do is kind of sort the bad guys into these forces of decreation, and you've got Ziz's darkness, and it aligns with lack of keeping people blind, lack of knowledge, feeling, all of that.
Like, so we've got Passover coming up. So you had the darkness that could be felt,
Okay, yes, yes,
in the
yes.
plagues. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and in Jewish, it ties in because in the Jewish, writings, you've got where Ziz like flies up and can block out the sun and basically cause an eclipse type thing or whatever,
Wow.
stuff like that. 'Cause it's supposed to be giant, just like the other two, Behemoth and Leviathan. But and then Behemoth is the wilderness, so it deals with the barrenness and lifelessness and being or void, just feeling empty and without hope and provision. It's
He
a
even looks
depression
sad.
and all that. Yeah. Well, and the little trivia there is Behemoth is like based off of Bahima, which is like cattle, beasts of the field,
Uh huh.
and
Yeah.
so he's like super cow. But and then of course, Leviathan, the chaos serpent, the water, because the waters are representative of chaos, and all that.